हेलो क्लैट वॉरियर्स, वेलकम टू द क्लास। आई बिलीव कि आपका ये मॉक बहुत ही अच्छा गया होगा, तो वेलकम टू दिस एनालिसिस ऑफ व्योम 2026 ऑफ आरसी। तो लेट्स बिगिन विद द फर्स्ट पैसेज एंड इट्स रियली इजी, आई बिलीव, राइट? तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं। इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ एंड डेवलपमेंट has long been seen to turn on natural resources, technological innovation and human capital। यानी हमको फर्स्ट लाइन से ही पता चल रहा है कि ऑथर इज टॉकिंग अबाउट इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ एंड डेवलपमेंट और किन किन वजहों से ये होता है, ठीक है? But a growing number of studies, including my own research, suggest that geographic proximity and cultural diversity, a place openness to different cultures, religions, sexual orientation, also play key roles in economic growth. So हम हमेशा से जानते पढ़ते आए हैं कि the very first line and the very last line of the passage is very important, very significant to determine the tone, to determine the central idea। और हमको पहले ही पैराग्राफ में पता चल रहा है कि the author is talking about economic growth and development and he is emphasizing on the openness to different culture, religion, sexual orientation, all in economic growth, right? Moving on to the next paragraph. Skeptics counter that diversity is an artifact of economic development. That means अभी जो काउंटर कर रहे हैं, जो इससे अग्री नहीं कर रहे हैं, वो क्या बोलते हैं? That diversity is a consequence of economic development rather than contributor, right? Moving on to the next line, they argue that diverse population flock to certain locations because they are either rich already or are fast becoming that way. An important new study by economics, this person and this of Brown University, should help put many of the skeptics' claim to rest. That culture diversity, geographical isolation and origin of the wealth and nation recently releases a working paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research charts the role of, this is important, the role of geographic isolation, proximity and cultural diversity on economic development from pre-industrial times of the modern times। तो यहाँ पे एक आर्ग्यूमेंट आया, एक यहाँ पे काउंटर आर्ग्यूमेंट आया, and again author is emphasizing on the key component of the passage, that is geographic isolation, proximity and cultural diversity on economic development from pre-industrial times to the modern era, how they are affecting it, right? It finds that the interplay between cultural assimilation and cultural diffusion have played a significant role in giving rise to differential pattern of economic development across the globe। तो अभी तक हमने क्या देखा? There is a reiteration of same concept in the passage, right? To put it in the plain English, diversity spurs economic development and homogeneity slows it down। तो अगर diversity रहेगी तो it grows, और अगर homogeneity रहेगी, similarity रहेगी, तो it slows down। This is author is emphasizing on। Moving on to the next. During the Industrial Revolution, Europe and New World developed a rate of economic development that far outpaced the rest of the world, the gap in per capita GDP between the richest regions in the world। So in these lines we can see that author is giving example or supporting details to emphasize on the idea he has presented in previous paragraphs। Still others suggest that its institution hold the key। Ashraf and Geller acknowledge the factors but argue that what really propelled Europe and New World's economy ascendance was their relative openness। Again, same idea has been reiterated here, relative openness to other cultures which they measure in terms of greater or lesser geographical isolation, right? To get at this, they developed a geographical isolation index based on travel time to 139 old per capita cities। They use this measure to gauge two things। क्या क्या? The first is the effect of geographic isolation on cultural diversity। The second looks at the effects of geographic isolation on the level of economic development from the 19th century until 1960। Their findings overwhelmingly suggest that cultural diversity and geographic openness matter significantly to economic development and across the board। Again, same thought has been presented by the author and he has validated it with this particular supporting detail, right? So यहाँ पे हमारा ऑथर ने एक कंक्लूजन दिया है जिसको मैंने अलग से उसका जो सेंट्रल आइडिया जो ऑथर प्रेजेंट कर रहा है हमारे पैसेज में, दैट इज द कल्चरल डाइवर्सिटी एंड जियोग्राफिक ओपननेस आर significant and independent drivers of economic growth and development. All right, I hope this passage is clear to you till now. Moving on, and the assumption, I have also written the assumption behind this particular central argument or central idea that author has presented in this particular passage is that there is a causal relationship between culture diversity, geographic openness and economic development, where diversity and openness lead to economic growth rather than merely being a result of it, right? Author is assuming it to be true, that's why he has given this particular central idea or central argument. Moving on to the question and answers. The first question, what does the passage suggest about the relationship between geographic proximity, cultural diversity and economic growth? क्या suggest कर रहा है, क्या relationship बता रहा है? तो पहला अगर हम option देखें, geographic proximity is the sole determinant. No. Actually, he has mentioned various other factors and also हमने सीखा हुआ है कि जहाँ पे extreme words आते हैं, we have to eliminate it until and unless it is present in the passage, right? चलिए. Cultural diversity and geographic proximity significantly contribute to economic growth. Yes, पूरे पैसेज में यही आइडिया तो वो बार बार रिपीट कर रहा है, emphasize कर रहा है कि how these two are very significant. Now, economic growth is solely dependent on natural resources and human capital. No. The passage has introduced diversity, proximity as additional key roles, right? Not solely determinant. And the D option, cultural diversity has no role in economic growth. It directly contradicts our central idea or conclusion of the passage. Hence, we have got our correct answer, that is B, right? Chaliye, moving on to the next. According to the passage, how skeptics view the role of cultural diversity in economic development? कैसे देखते हैं skeptics? यानी they believe cultural diversity contributes. नहीं भाई, it directly contradicts the skeptics view and strengthens our conclusion or author का view, right? They argue that cultural diversity is merely an outcome of existing. Yes, they have used this word artifact, right? Economic development, not a cause. So skeptics says, as stated in the passage, is an artifact of economic development rather than a contributor. Yes, so this is the correct answer. Skeptics view cultural diversity merely as an outcome or artifact. They argue that cultural diversity hinders economic growth. तो hindering की कोई भी बात हमारे पैसेज में नहीं कही गई है. Rather, author skeptics ने बोला कि it is an outcome, it is an artifact, it is an result. They believe cultural diversity is irrelevant to economic development. No, they acknowledge its presence, but dispute its causal role. Right? वो completely उसको nullify नहीं कर रहे हैं. चलिए आगे बढ़ते हैं अगले क्वेश्चन में. What is the main argument put forth by Ashraf and Galore in the study? So, first option is homogeneity leads to economic growth while diversity hinders it. No. It just contradicts our central idea. Homogeneity leads to economic growth. नहीं, homogeneity actually slows it down as given in the passage, and diversity actually what? बताइए. Diversity does not hinder, rather it supports it. Geographic isolation and cultural assimilation have played a significant role in economic development. Yes, this is what author has been emphasizing on. This is the repeated idea. This is the repeated idea or key component of the passage. फिर आगे आता है, economic development is determined only by natural resources and technological innovation. No, it is very narrow. The study expands beyond these traditional factors. The industrial revolution was solely responsible for the growth in per capita GDP across the globe. No, it explains why the divergence happened, attributing it to cultural opening up, not the just revolution itself. So this option is also very narrow. So the correct answer is B. I hope आपको explanation अच्छे से समझ में आ रहे होंगे. If you have comprehended the passage well and if you have got the correct interpretation or if you have understood the focus of the author, that is on the openness and diversity. Which of the following words cannot replace word thrift? यानी हमको thrift का क्या लेके आना है? एंटोनिम लेकर के आना है. तो frugality, prudence, caution, everything किसकी तरफ सिग्निफाई करते हैं? That cautious with money. थ्रिफ्ट मीन्स क्या होता है? समवन हु इज वेरी कॉशियस विद मनी, केयरफुल विद मनी, एंड थ्रिफ्ट एक्स्ट्रावेगेंस जो अननेसेसरी पैसा कहीं भी उड़ा देता है. तो यस, दिस इज ऑपोजिट ऑफ B. तो करेक्ट आंसर इज B. What does the passage imply about the long-term effects of cultural diversity on economic development? क्या इन्फ्लुएंस निकाल रहे हैं हम about long-term effects? देखते हैं. Option A says the proliferation of cultural heterogeneity engenders systemic inefficiencies. अगर cultural heterogeneity आती है तो उसमें systemic inefficiencies होती हैं. It just contradicts. और ज्यादा efficiency आती है, ना कि inefficiency आती है. Right? Empirical analysis suggests that presence of cultural heterogeneity exerts a statistically negligible influence, no very significant influence, isn't it? So again making it incorrect. Cultural pluralism is increasingly recognized as pivotal determinant in fostering sustained economic expansion, primarily through its capacity to enhance innovation, broaden human capital, and stimulate dynamic knowledge based on economies. Yes, the passage का conclusion यही है that matters significantly to economic development across the board and spurs economic development, implying a lasting and positive impact by fostering innovation and broader skills. All right. डी ऑप्शन भी देख लेते हैं. While cultural heterogeneity may catalyze short-term economic stimulation through increased creativity and market expansion, its long-term impact on sustained economic development appears limited. नहीं भाई, यहाँ पे फिर इस ऑप्शन में हमें contradict कर दिया. Often constrained by challenges in social cohesion and institutional integration, hence D is also incorrect. Moving on to the next passage. I hope आपको first passage उसका central idea, what author is trying to convey, what is his conclusion and what are the question का requirements आपको बहुत अच्छे से समझ में आ गए होंगे. Moving on to the next passage. Okay, in a commencement speech at Stanford, Sundar Pichai said 4 words that encapsulate years of research on the psychology of human motivation: reward efforts not outcomes. ठीक है, अभी हमको पता चल गया कि ऑथर का फोकस कहाँ पे है, रिवॉर्ड एफर्ट्स नॉट आउटकम्स, एंड वी विल सी दैट ये वाला थॉट, दिस आइडिया विल रीअकर अगेन एंड अगेन इन आवर पैसेज. और फिर जो हमारे क्वेश्चंस होंगे, हमें इस फोकस से डाइवर्ट नहीं होना है. अगर हम नहीं होते हैं तो वी विल गेट ऑल आवर आंसर्स करेक्ट, और अगर हो जाते हैं तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली वी विल शिफ्ट फ्रॉम द ऑथर्स फोकस एंड आवर आंसर्स विल बी रॉन्ग. So what he is tapping into here is creating sources of intrinsic motivation. Again we got a term, intrinsic motivation means motivating people to do something because they truly enjoy it, love the challenge or find it interesting, as opposed to seeking a reward. ठीक है? In other words, make results kind of irrelevant. This might sound counterintuitive. After all, what is in it for you? What you really want is that good test score or that excellent report card, right? तो पहले बार में वो बात कर रहे हैं intrinsic motivation की, कि how you do it. Any student or any person should be motivated on the approach, the way he should be motivated for the approach he does a task rather than the outcome. ठीक है, आगे देखते हैं क्या बोलता है. Think again. In reality, science backs the intrinsic route. Here's why you should too. Your employees and your kid will thank you for it. Your employees will procrastinate less. अगर हम extrinsic की जगह external factors यानी outcome को reward करने की जगह अगर हम effort को reward करते हैं तो क्या होगा? हमारे kids हैं, हमारे employees क्या करेंगे? Procrastinate कम करेंगे, यानी आज की बात कल पे कम डालेंगे. It's all well and good to preach a result-driven ethos until you really have to get down to living it. Being result-driven is a form of extrinsic. अगर हम सिर्फ outcome पे ध्यान देते हैं, result पे बस ध्यान देते हैं, तो it is an extrinsic motivation. This means that motivation behind your behavior is either the seeking of specific external reward or the avoidance of specific external punishment. या तो आप किसी रिवॉर्ड, बोनस, सैलरी, चॉकलेट की आशा में आप वो काम कर रहे हैं, या तो आपको पनिशमेंट ना मिले इसलिए वो काम कर रहे हैं. आपका अंदर से कोई इंटरेस्ट या एंथुसियाज्म नहीं है वो काम करने में. ठीक है, It turns our worth are usually dictated by the environments we are in. नहीं, it turns out this orientation is terribly for long term productivity. अगर हम intrinsic में जाते हैं तो क्या होगी? Long term productivity होगी. The external thresholds against which we measure our worth are usually dictated by the environments we are in. So when we become so focused on the goal, the precise steps needed to be achieved, we can fall into the trap of socially prescribed perfectionism. अगर हम सिर्फ outcome oriented हो जाते हैं, goal oriented हो जाते हैं, तो हम किस trap में फंस सकते हैं? Socially prescribed perfectionism, SPP. उसने एक phrase दिया है. Research shows that SPP is linked टू डिप्रेशन. अब अगर हम गोल ओरिएंटेड बस होते हैं, अप्रोच ओरिएंटेड नहीं होते हैं, तो क्या हो सकता है? डिप्रेशन, टेस्ट एंजाइटी, डिक्रीज लाइकलीहुड टू हेल्प सीकिंग. दीज आर ऑल अनप्लेजेंट फीलिंग्स एंड व्हाट डू वी डू टू अवॉइड दीज? वी प्रोकास्टिनेट कि ठीक है भाई हम अभी नहीं कभी कर लेंगे. व्हेन एफर्ट नॉट आउटकम इज rewarded, we are more likely to take risk. When जब एफर्ट को हम रिवॉर्ड करते हैं ना कि आउटकम को, तो क्या होता है? हम we are more likely to take risk, we are less likely to fall in the trap of this perfectionism. Okay, I hope यहाँ तक आपको पैसे समझ में आ गया होगा. Moving on to the next paragraph. That's how innovation is born. अभी अगर हम एफर्ट को रिवॉर्ड करते हैं, उसी से इनोवेशन आता है, ऐसा हमारा ऑथर कह रहा है. Why? When our performance is not judged by its destination, यानी जब हमारे जो परफॉर्मेंस है वो आउटकम से जज नहीं होती है, रादर we feel more confident in pushing and pulling the journey and contorting it into something unique and twisting it something unique and unplanned. In fact, research shows that intrinsic motivation has positive effect on creative and innovative performance. तो हमें बार बार क्या पता चल रहा है कि हमारा ऑथर इज फोकसिंग ऑन इंट्रिंसिक motivation, right? That's because when we are intrinsically motivated, we feel a sense of ownership over our work, connected deeply to its metaphysical meaning, brush up on relevant skill that will make us more competent and feel confident in the story we are pushing for. तो author उसके फायदे बता रहा है कि अगर हम क्या इंट्रिंसिक यानी हम अपने अप्रोच को अगर रिवॉर्डेड, ये वाली अप्रोच होती है तो क्या क्या चीजें होती है? वी फील कनेक्टेड, वी फील डीपली कनेक्टेड टू आवर वर्क, दैट देयर इज अ सेंस ऑफ ओनरशिप ओवर आवर वर्क एंड वी ब्रश अप ऑन रेलेवेंट स्किल दैट विल मेक अस मोर कॉम्पिटेंट. रादर की वो एंजाइटी जो एक्सट्रिंसिक मोटिवेशन में ऑथर ने डिस्कस किया है, उसके जस्ट ऑपोजिट इंट्रिंसिक को वो ज्यादा क्या कर रहा है? अपलॉड कर रहा है. ठीक है. It's no wonder then that through rewarding efforts and not outcomes, now author is giving one example of Google कि कैसे intrinsic efforts से intrinsic rewarding से जब उसने rewarding को effort दिया, effort को reward दिया, जब effort को reward दिया rather than outcome, तो Google was one of the very first companies to be completely carbon neutral by 2007, long before sustainable practices debuted in the mainstream. ठीक है. आई होप आपको पैसे समझ में आ गया होगा. लेट्स मूव ऑन टू द क्वेश्चन. तो सेंट्रल आइडिया of this particular passage is rewarding effort rather than outcomes fosters intrinsic motivation which leads to long-term productivity, reduced procrastination and greater innovation. It argues that this approach, though seemingly counterintuitive, is scientifically backed and superior to relying on extrinsic motivators tied to specific results. ठीक है. तो जब हमारा सेंट्रल आर्ग्यूमेंट या कंक्लूजन जो ऑथर हमको फाइनली कन्वे कर रहा होता है, ये क्लियर होता है, बहुत ज्यादा क्लियर होता है, तो देयर इज 1% और आई वुड से 0.99% ही चांसेस होते हैं कि हमारे क्वेश्चंस गलत होंगे, बिकॉज हमने पैसेज को बहुत अच्छे से कॉम्प्रिहेंड कर लिया है. ठीक है. और कई सारे बच्चों का ये क्वेश्चंस डाउट होता है या क्वेश्चन होता है कि मैम पैसेज बहुत लंबा होता है, हम कौन सा डिटेल्स को ध्यान में रखें, कौन सा डिटेल को नहीं ध्यान में रखें, एंड वी गेट लाइक हम कंफ्यूज हो जाते हैं. तो कंफ्यूज नहीं होना, जस्ट फोकस ऑन द कंक्लूजन व्हाट ऑथर इज फाइनली कन्वेइंग टू यू एंड स्टिक टू दैट एंड यू विल गेट योर आंसर्स करेक्ट. चलिए, which of the following best summarizes the central argument of the passage? People should be motivated by external rewards. अब हमने क्योंकि बहुत अच्छे से पैसेज को समझ लिया है, तो क्या हम इस आंसर को कभी टिक करेंगे? नहीं करेंगे, राइट? Results driven, because it is just contradicting with our central idea. Results driven motivation is crucial for long term success. क्या result driven बोला है या effort driven बोला है? Yes, effort driven बोला है, तो B भी हमारा incorrect है. Intrinsic motivation focusing on effort rather than outcome leads to better long term outcome. यही तो हमारा central idea है, isn't it? ठीक है, तो C is the correct answer. Perfectionism and external standards are essential for achieving innovative results. नई passage links perfectionism to anxiety and procrastination की अगर हम perfectionism की वो STP I forgot that, हमने यहाँ पे पढ़ा था ना SPP, राइट? सोशली प्रेस्क्राइब परफेक्शन से क्या क्या होता है? डिप्रेशन, टेक्स्ट एंजाइटी, डिक्रीज लाइक्लीहुड ऑफ हेल्प सीकिंग. इसी से हमारा ये क्वेश्चन है. Yes, perfectionism and external standards are essential for achieving innovative results. No, पैसेज इसका जस्ट उल्टा बोल रहा है, that it will lead to anxiety and procrastination, not innovation, right? Moving on to the next question. What does the passage suggest about the relationship between effort, outcome and risk taking? क्या सजेस्ट करता है? The effort, outcome and risk taking. पढ़ते हैं, आइए. The prospect of favorable outcomes serves as a potent incentive mechanism, increasing the propensity for individuals to engage in risk-laden decision-making behaviors. अगर हम favorable outcome serve करेंगे तो it will lead to a risk. नहीं, ये बिल्कुल उल्टा बोल रहा है. अगर हम outcome को reward करेंगे तो नहीं होगा, rather इसका उल्टा बोला गया है कि अगर हम effort को reward करेंगे तो it will lead to more risk or risk-laden decision-making behaviors. So option A is incorrect. Reinforcing effort rather than outcomes has been shown to enhance individuals' willingness to engage in risk-oriented behaviors as it shifts focus toward the intrinsic value of persistent and process over result-dependent validation. Yes, again, अगर आप देख रहे हैं कि all the options are aligned with the conclusion. अगर support का, inference का, assumption का, किसी चीज का भी question आता है तो it will align with the conclusion. This particular option is also aligning with the conclusion. Option C, the propensity to engage in risk-laden behavior is not determinative factor in motivational dynamics, suggesting that risk-taking operates independently of the core. में नहीं भाई, independently नहीं है. The drive goal-directed action, rather passage clearly links rewarding effort to increase risk. अगर rewarding effort होगा तो ही risk-taking होगा, ये independent action नहीं है. चलिए, option D. Emphasizing effort-based rewards can inadvertently heighten. Effort-based rewards अनजाने में क्या heighten कर सकते हैं? Performance-related anxiety. नहीं, इसका just उल्टा बोला गया है कि outcome-based जो emphasizing on outcome-based rewards can actually heighten performance-related anxiety. Again, D is incorrect. I hope you are understanding each and every option and question. Moving on to the next question. What conclusion can be drawn about Google's carbon neutrality based on the passage? Last line में जो उसने एक example दिया है to support his idea, देखते हैं. It is an example of how extrinsic motivation lead to, बिल्कुल उल्टा कह रहा है, बिल्कुल contradict कर रहा है. Example है कि कैसे intrinsic motivation leads to long-term success. It reflects the company's commitment to rewarding efforts. Yes. Over outcomes, fostering innovation. Yes, this is the correct answer. Very explicit, right? It is unrelated to the motivational approach discussed in the passage. अच्छा, कुछ भी incorrect. It was achieved solely. Extreme word, फिर भी आगे पढ़ते हैं. Through result-driven practice. भैया नहीं, result-driven practice से का example नहीं था. Author is contradicting with result-driven approaches and bolstering effort-driven approaches, right? चलिए, next question. What is the primary idea behind Sundar Pichai's statement? Reward efforts, not outcomes. ये तो बिल्कुल ही सही आंसर होने वाला है आपका, because we have very clearly understood the conclusion. It underscores the significance of motivation primarily anchored in the attainment of measurable outcomes, thereby prioritizing performance metrics over intrinsic of. नहीं, it just contradicts the conclusion, isn't it? It promotes a motivational framework wherein individuals are encouraged on the basis of their intrinsic interest and sustained efforts they invest rather than the extrinsic value of tangible outcomes. Yes, Pichai ka statement means creating sources of intrinsic motivation, which the passage defines as motivating people to do something because they truly enjoy it, love the challenge or find it interesting. Very first paragraph में आपको ये lines मिल जाएंगी, as opposed to seeking a reward or avoiding a punishment. नहीं, result oriented नहीं, rather effort oriented. ठीक है? Option C, it proposes an approach centered exclusively on extrinsic incentives. Nahi, again wrong. It endorses a performance paradigm in which the attainment of outcome is accorded greater significance. No, attainment of outcome nahi, approach या effort is accorded greater significance than process or effort. नहीं, बिल्कुल उल्टी बात कह रहा है जो कि हमारा पैसेज कह रहा है या कंक्लूजन कह रहा है. Hence we have got the correct answer, that is B. Moving on to the third passage. When we talk about automation, algorithm, decision making and artificial intelligence often think about the future rather than present. यानी कि यहाँ पे बात हमको आगे मिलने वाली ऑटोमेशन, एल्गोरिथम, डिसीजन मेकिंग एंड एआई की, which we think about that the future rather than present. हम अभी की जगह कहाँ की सोचते हैं, आगे की सोचते हैं. यानी it is setting the tone की problem is now, not in the future. Let's read. The media and political class talk breathlessly about the possibilities of such advanced technologies, driverless cars, integrated workplaces, and just-in-time customer experiences. Meanwhile, for the dystopians, who are dystopians? Search karo, utopian and dystopian, right? Dystopians as artificial intelligence evokes the prospect of faceless machinery dominating human society. The robots will eat all the jobs. जो negative है, जो pessimist हैं, जो dystopians हैं, who are more inclined कि सब they look for all the negative things in the society, वो क्या बोलते हैं कि भैया artificial intelligence evokes prospect of faceless machinery, जो कि robot will eat all the jobs and use our human bodies as batteries to power their ruthless sociopathic. Sociopathic means lack of any empathy, right? New order, even tech boosters are worried about the future of super intelligence. ठीक है, तो अभी फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ में किसकी बात हो रही है, फ्यूचर के प्रॉब्लम की बात हो रही है, जबकि वेरी फर्स्ट सेंटेंस इज टॉकिंग अबाउट कि प्रॉब्लम लाइज इन प्रेजेंट रादर देन इन फ्यूचर. यानी अब हमको कुछ प्रेजेंट की बात मिलने वाली है. चलो देखते हैं. As author Kate Crawford pointed out a few years ago, a sector of affluent white men, wealthy white men who pondered the singularity imagined an existential threat to human life. Singularity means that uncontrollable development of this machinery. ठीक है? Imagine existential threat to human. These AI will be existential threat to human life. Perhaps for them the biggest threat is the rise of an artificial intelligent apex predator. Apex यानी सबसे ऊपर, predator यानी that eats, right? But the present problem is that engineers are already building all kinds of present की problem यहाँ पे दिख रही है ना. हमको यहाँ पे ध्यान देना है कि present, अभी तक तो future की problem के बारे में बात हो रही है, लोगों को future के बारे में चिंता है, पर author is focusing on the present problem and concern. The present problem क्या है? That engineers are already building all kinds of discrimination into algorithms. ठीक है, ये प्रॉब्लम है. For those who already face marginalization or bias, the threats are here. क्या क्या threats हैं? In reality, automated decision making systems already influence millions of people's lives every day. ठीक है, often in insidious ways, very harming ways and without accountability. Very important. वो कैसे affect कर रहे हैं, millions of people की life को affect कर रहे हैं without any accountability and in an harmful way. ठीक है, perhaps most obviously the content that we see in many popular online spaces is not the same as they seen by our neighbors. जो हमारे फीड में जो कंटेंट आ रहा है जरूरी नहीं कि वही कंटेंट हमारे नेबर के फीड में आ रहा हो. क्यों? आगे देखते हैं. Online spaces are curated to suit us, or at least a version of us as homo consumption companies. जो ऑनलाइन स्पेस है वो हमारी प्रेफरेंस के हिसाब से क्यूरेट किया जाता है और at least a version of homo consumption companies like Google and Facebook collect as much data as possible, because the more finely grained the information that companies can collect about users, the greater the capacity of these platforms to segment audiences for advertising. तो ये वो कह रहे हैं कि हम उनके प्रेफरेंसेस, उनके चॉइसेस के हिसाब से हम ह्यूमन को अलग अलग सेगमेंट किया जाता है, जिससे कि एडवर्टाइजिंग कंपनीज को अपने प्रोडक्ट्स को एडवर्टाइज करने में आसानी हो. ठीक है, तो जरूरी नहीं कि जो चीजें मेरे स्पेस पे, मेरे ऑनलाइन स्पेस पे दिख रही हो, वही चीजें मेरे फ्रेंड या मेरे बगल वाले के ऑनलाइन स्पेस में दिख रही हो. Advertisers can select from targeted audience that are automatically generated without human oversight. As a result, Facebook has permitted digital redlining. Important. By allowing advertisers to exclude people from particular ads based on race. ठीक है, यहाँ भी डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हो रहा है कि हमें क्या देखना है क्या नहीं देखना है, ये they are deciding. And Google has allowed automated ad categories, enabling companies to advertise to those with affinities for hate speech, who are more inclined to hate speeches. वो उनकी जो फीड होगी वो वैसी ही होगी. Their online space will be full of that only, right? No doubt there is plenty more of this discriminatory and illegal behavior going on that has thus far avoided scrutiny. तो यहाँ पे ऑथर क्या कह रहा है कि लोगों के बीच में डिस्क्रिमिनेशन किया जा रहा है, बायसनेस है, बांटा जा रहा है, और दैट इज also it is in a very harmful way, it is unaccountable and without any scrutiny. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं. The secondary data market where companies sell data sets in exchange for insights has generated the capacity to build or buy automated tools to allow access to customer outside of these platforms. क्या बोल रहे हैं कि डेटा मार्केट में कंपनीज हमारा डेटा सेल करती हैं. Predatory industries like payday lenders, gambling companies, and for-profit private education providers extensively manipulate web users using automated processes to seek out those who are vulnerable and exploit that vulnerability for profit. So this is the conclusion of the author, and let's see the central idea क्या है भाई. The immediate threat and problem. उसने क्या बोला कि हम फ्यूचर की सोच रहे हैं, पर अभी हमें प्रेजेंट के बारे में, प्रेजेंट के कंसर्न्स एंड प्रॉब्लम्स के बारे में सोचना चाहिए. The immediate threat and problem with automation, algorithm, decision making and AI is not a futuristic scenario of robot dominating or eating human, right, using us as battery, but the current reality of building discrimination and exploitation of vulnerable populations through biased algorithms and automated systems. The passage urges a shift in focus from future speculation to addressing the present day harms. I hope आपको पैसेज बहुत अच्छे से समझ में आ गया होगा. Let's move on to the question and answer. And one thing that we have to keep in mind, our answer must align with the given conclusion, right? So the first question. What is the primary concern regarding the use of automated decision making system in the present day? क्या है primary concern अभी का? बिल्कुल सही आंसर है आपका C, that is they perpetuate discrimination and bias often without unaccountability, right, without any scrutiny. They are not, option A, they are not advanced enough to be effective. बिल्कुल उल्टी बात करें, they are very advanced, right? They are dominated by affluent white men who fear super. No, they are not dominated. एक स्टेटमेंट दिया गया है कि white affluent people का क्या डर है, but they are not dominated by these people, isn't it? They fail to meet consumer expectation for personalized experience. बिल्कुल नहीं. They are very much apt to meet the requirement of their users. What does the phrase homo consumption in the passage imply? Humans are perceived as beings with diverse intellectual pursuits. No. Intellectual pursuits तो उनको माना ही नहीं गया है. Humans are primarily seen as consumers to be targeted by advertisers. Very direct. Yes. क्या बोल रहा है कि ऑनलाइन स्पेसेस आर क्यूरेटेड टू सूट अस, और एटलीस्ट अ वर्जन ऑफ अस एज होमो कंजम्पशन, एंड companies like Google and Facebook collect as much data as possible, because the more finely grained the information that companies can collect about users, the greater the capacity of these platforms to segment the audience for advertising. So in short, online platform treat us like customers to sell things, not like full human beings, right? Human are evolving toward complete reliance on, complete reliance कहाँ है, हम तो we are slave to them. Human are resisting the commodification of their online presence. उनको पता भी नहीं है कि उनके साथ क्या हो रहा है, as given in the passage. Human oversight, remember पढ़ा था, ठीक है. Why does the author critique companies like Google and Facebook in the passage? क्यों वो criticize कर रहा है इन companies को, author हमारा? They fail to collect enough data. इसका उल्टा बोल रहा है कि they collect all our data and sell it in the market, right? तो A तो बिल्कुल हमारा आंसर नहीं होगा. They enable discriminatory practices through automated ad targeting. Yes, very explicitly stated in the second last paragraph that Facebook has permitted digital redlining by allowing advertisers to exclude people from particular ads based on race, and Google has allowed automated ad categories, enabling companies to advertise to those with affinities for hate speech. ठीक है. They promote transparency and accountability. नहीं भाई, accountability तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं है, इसीलिए तो वो criticize कर रहा है. They have eliminated the use of human oversight in decision making. No, it does not, it haven't, right? So we have got our answer, that is B. What is the author's stance on the role of automation in the secondary data market? उसका क्या author का stance है? Let's see. Automation is the secondary data market empowers consumers by offering them more choices. No, we do not get any choices, rather they get choices कि हमें they are using us as a consumers to buy, to sell things to us, right? Automation enables predatory industries to exploit vulnerable individuals for profit. Yes, predatory, as mentioned in the passage, like payday lenders, gambling companies, and for-profit private education providers extensively manipulate web users' automated process to seek out those who are vulnerable and exploit their vulnerability for profit. So, yes, B is the correct option. हमारे passage से directly support हो रहा है this option. C, automation is the secondary data market promotes ethical. ethical की तो कहीं बात ही नहीं हुई. Non-ethical practice. Automation has minimal impact on how companies target. No, automation has the significant impact, not minimum impact. So we have got the correct answer. That is option B. I hope आपको समझ में आ रहा होगा, और अगर आप पैटर्न देख रहे होंगे तो each and every answer is aligning with the conclusion or central idea, right? ठीक है. All right, let's begin with passage 4. Yes, passage 4. Trump is now in the business of cutting the deals he wants. The very first line is setting the tone of the passage, that Trump is cutting the deals he wants regardless of the needs of US one-time key ally, that is Israel. He agreed a separate pact with Houthis in Yemen, which prevents them attacking US shipping but leaves them free to keep raining rockets on Israel. So he is ensuring that it is US is protected but keep raining rockets on Israel. He said he is very close to a nuclear deal with Iran, waving aside the decades-long conviction of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that Tehran's nuclear ambitions will only be halted by force. So Trump made nice with Erdogan of Turkey, unfazed by the latter's hostility to Israel and close ties to Hamas. He even dealt with Hamas all but directly, securing the group's release of Eden Alexander, a dual US-Israeli citizen, a move that Netanyahu only heard about once it was done. So, in this particular first passage only, we see that Trump has made separate deals, like one with Houthis and to protect US shipping, even if it means they can still attack Israel. He is also hinting at nuclear deal with Iran, ignoring Iran's non-standing concerns. He has even been friendly with Turkey leader Erdogan, despite Erdogan's anti-Israel stance and ties with Hamas. Right? Moving on to the next. So it is, Trump explicitly says that Trump is telling Netanyahu that he is no longer number one, that he will not get in the way of whatever Trump decides best serves US and his own interest. ट्रम्प किसके बीच में नहीं आएगा, जो कि यूएस के इंटरेस्ट पे सबसे ज्यादा होगा या फिर हिज ओन इंटरेस्ट. एंड पार्ट ऑफ हिज दिस इज बॉर्न ऑफ फ्रस्ट्रेशन. ये सब हुआ क्यों? because of frustration with Netanyahu for failing to play his part in getting the Middle East to stability and therefore prosperity that Trump thinks is possible and potentially profitable for the US. Put simply, what Trump wants from Netanyahu is to get the war on Hamas wrapped up and off the world's TV screen, and the Israeli Prime Minister is not delivering it. So it is because all these things, whatever we have read in the very first passage, it is because of the frustration towards Israel's Prime Minister, because he can actually stop the war, but he is not. Let's find out why. Okay? You could hear that frustration in the remarks of Trump's personal envoy, Steve Witkoff, to hostage families in Israel this week. We want to bring the hostages home, but Israel is not willing to end the war. Israel is prolonging it. Okay? In fact, polls show huge majority of Israeli public keen, if not desperate, to see an immediate end to the war. But Netanyahu is defying his citizens for wholly selfish reasons. The author is pointing out that the Prime Minister is defying this because of his selfish reasons. On trial for corruption, he can only be sure to stay out of prison if he remains in the PM's chair. So to avoid jail, he is prolonging the war because of his own self-interest, right? To do that, he has to keep his ruling coalition in place, including the true ultra-nationalist extremists, These two, those men want the war to go on and on, dreaming of Gaza cleared for the return of Jewish settlement. So these ultra-nationalist extremists who are in the coalition with Israel's Prime Minister government, they want that war must go on until the return of Jewish settlement. And thinking only of his own survival, Netanyahu goes to their demands and keep the fires of war burning no matter the human cost. ठीक है? I hope यहाँ तक आपको पैसे समझ में आ गया होगा. Author is emphasizing कि because of Netanyahu's personal interest, he is supporting those nationalist extremists, and they want कि उनको गाजा चाहिए, and this person wants कि he wants to avoid jail, okay? Which is how you end up with atrocity of an Israeli government using starvation as weapon of war, blocking the entry of all aid into Gaza. Okay. Since 2nd March, this is not an accusation against the government, it is a boast made by them. So they are boasting it that we have actually restricted all the aids for Gaza, and the Defense Minister Israel Katz spelled it out last month. Israel's policy is clear, no humanitarian aid will enter Gaza. He described the blocking of aid as one of the main pressure lever on the Hamas. So stopping or preventing aid is their weapon to actually win this war. Now, Israeli officials defend airstrikes such as those that killed scores this week by saying they are aimed at Hamas military sites or commanders, including the group leader in Gaza. But they can make no such claims for the use of mass hunger, which is indiscriminate by its very nature. It is legally a war crime and morally unconscionable, and yet it is the stated policy of this indespicable Israeli government. Look at the word choices author is using, how disgusted he is. Okay? Lots of criticization to this government. Too little attention is paid to the convergence of circumstances that created this catastrophe. अब ये जो situation है, ये आई कहाँ से? The fact that the heinous Hamas atrocities of 7th October 2023 occurred on the watch of an Israeli government shaped by Kahanist and Prime Minister ready to cross every red line to stay out of jail. Okay? And save his own skin. His personal interest, that combination has brought us to this terrible moment when the suffering and killing seem as if they will never end. ठीक है. फिर now author is suggesting that there may be only one man who can call a halt. Halt, that means temporary end to this war. That is, Trump could continue what he started this week, making deals across the Middle East that cut out Israel but also do nothing for Palestinians, or following his admission as he left the region on Friday that people in Gaza are starving and his promise that we are going to get that taken care of. He could use the muscle he has and force Netanyahu to accept the bargain that has been on the table for months, the release for all remaining hostages and an end to the war. So finally, author is suggesting that Trump has that muscle, that means Trump has that power that he can put an end to this war by acknowledging, if he has acknowledged the Palestinian problem, he must take some action, right? Of course, what doesn't stricken Israeli families and millions of shattered, starving Palestinians need are new leaders. Now, author is again suggesting कि इनको किसकी ज़रूरत है? New leaders willing and capable of shaping for themselves a better destiny for both people, ideally together. Until that day, their lives are in the hands of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump must take some action. Author is suggesting that. Let's see the central idea. So Donald Trump is actively reorienting US foreign policy in the Middle East, right? Prioritizing his perceived US interest and personal agenda. Look at the modifiers. Perceived US interest and personal agenda over the traditional alliance with Israel, largely due to his frustration with Benjamin Netanyahu leadership, which the author portrays as self-serving and leading to dire humanitarian consequences, including the use of starvation as a weapon. The passage concludes suggesting Trump holds the key to ending the conflict, at least for now. I hope passage is clear to you now, right? Moving on to the questions. What is the article's overarching conclusion regarding Trump's recent? हमें तो conclusion एकदम ही clear है. अभी आप बताइए आंसर क्या है? I hope आपका ये आंसर सही हो. Trump is successfully reshaping the Middle East towards lasting peace. No, the passage is not about lasting peace at all. The passage is about the suffering, the turmoil, right? And the personal interest. Trump is weakening Israel's strategic position to appease Arab nations. Yes, this is the correct answer. He is weakening Israel's strategic position. Passage repeatedly states that cutting the deals he wants regardless of the needs of US one-time key ally. He tells that he is no longer number one and acts to best serve US and his own interest. Even making pacts that benefit adversaries of Israel. Like if it is negatively affecting Israel, then also he'll continue with those pacts. ठीक है? Trump is advancing a balanced diplomacy. Is it balanced in any way? No. Option D, Trump is restoring traditional US foreign policy. He is not restoring traditional US policy. Rather, he is shifting from those policies, traditional policies, by stating Trump is acting regardless of the needs of US one-time key ally. That means he is not reinforcing those traditional policies. Rather, he is shifting away from it, right? चलिए. How can the tone of article be described? क्या tone आपने समझा इसकी? अगर आप बोल रहे हैं optimistic and hopeful है about Middle East peace, तो it was never about Middle East peace, and the tone is not optimistic and hopeful at all. Cautiously supportive of Trump's pragmatic deals. No, author is not even supporting Trump's pragmatic deals. The language he has used, हमने पढ़ा है, selfish reason, atrocity, despicable. These choices of words actually show कि author is not supporting any one of it, right? Critical and skeptical of Trump's erratic and impulsive diplomacy. So yes, author has used strong judgmental language towards both Trump and Netanyahu. For Trump, phrases like cutting the deals he wants regardless of the needs, waving aside, and Netanyahu's conviction suggest a critical view of his unconventional, self-driven, selfish reasons and despicable Israeli government. Hence, it predicts an erratic and impulsive tone, right? I hope you have understood the tone. Neutral and factual without emotional coloring. Whole passage is emotionally charged. बिल्कुल भी neutral या factual नहीं है हमारा passage, right? चलिए. Which economic implication is indirectly suggested by Trump's approach to Middle East diplomacy? ठीक है? A shift in US foreign aid from Israel to Palestine. Is it about shifting his aid to Israel to Palestine? No. The passage never talks about shifting the help or support from Israel to Palestine. Rather, US arms exports will likely expand in non-Israeli regional market. Yes, pehle he was supporting Israel, now he is not. So the arms export will likely expand in non-Israeli regional markets. The US economy will benefit from removing sanctions on Syria. Syria बिल्कुल आउट ऑफ स्कोप ऑप्शन है ये हमारा. ट्रम्प्स डिप्लोमेसी इज फोकस्ड ऑन रिड्यूसिंग ओवरऑल मिलिट्री स्पेंडिंग. अगर सिर्फ हम मिलिट्री स्पेंडिंग की बात करें तो द ऑप्शन बिकम्स वेरी स्पेसिफिक, हेंस वी हैव गॉट द करेक्ट आंसर, दैट इज बी. यस, चलिए. What broader political inference can be drawn from Trump's handling of US Middle East relation? क्या inference आपने draw किया? Let's see. Trump is intentionally isolating Israel to provoke regime change. The passage was never about government change, isn't it? No. A is incorrect. Trump's diplomacy reflected transactional, leader-centric foreign policy detached from long-standing alliance. Yes. Go to the paragraph 1 and read those lines. It totally reflects a transactional, leader-centric foreign policy detached from long-standing alliance, detached from Israel and working in his own interest, right? So B is the correct answer. Trump is aligning US foreign policy with UN's multilateral approach. Multilateral approach means working with various nations harmoniously. ऐसा तो कहीं भी कुछ भी नहीं है. He is working on US interest and his own interest, right? तो C is also eliminated. Trump is reverting to Cold War era spheres of influence in the region. Out of scope option. हमारे पैसेज में कहीं भी इसकी बात नहीं हुई है. Moving on to the fifth passage. So it was a literary passage. Did you like it? Did you understand? Did you totally comprehend it? या फिर कोई दिक्कत हुई? चलो साथ में समझते हैं, ठीक है? Many existentialists take my concretely individual body and specific type of life that my body lives as a primary fact about me. These are those existentialists. I must also be situated socially. Each of my acts says something about how I view others. Reciprocally, each of their acts is a view about what I am. So existentialists, lots of existentialists believe that I am what? My physical body and my actions. It says individual body and a specific type of life that body lives, right? And ये it is situated socially. I said एक social context होता है जहाँ पे each of my acts says something about how I view others. मेरे हर act किस पे dependent रहते हैं कि मैं society को या दूसरे व्यक्ति को कैसे देख रहा हूँ. And each of their act is a view about what I am and their actions will be based on how I am or what I am. चलिए. My freedom is always situated with respect to the judgment of others. Freedom तो है, but it is situated with judgment, how society see me, right? This particular notion comes from Hegel's analysis of recognition and is found especially in Sartre, de Beauvoir and Jaspers. तो ये जो idea है कि how I am and what I am will be socially डिटर्मिन्ड. ये आइडिया कहां से आया? हीगल्स एनालिसिस ऑफ रिकॉग्निशन से. और कहां पाया गया? यहां पे. नाउ the author is talking about situatedness in general also as an important philosophical antecedent in Marx. अब यही चीज मार्क्स की बातों में भी आती है. क्या आती है? That economic and political conditions are not contingent features with respect to universal human nature, but condition that nature from the ground up. So these are economic and political conditions are actually those basic things that affect the human, right? Their actions. Now, although of course existentialism takes its name from the philosophical theme of existence. Name कहाँ से existentialism का कहाँ से नाम आया? Existence से, but this does not entail that there is homogeneity. अब author क्या कह रहे हैं? इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि दोनों similar हैं. कैसे? In the manner existence is to be understood, like I exist or you exist to be that means to be understood. One point on which there is agreement though is that the existence with which we should be concerned here is not just any existing thing but human existence. कि कोई भी ऐसी बॉडी नहीं कि अगर वो एग्जिस्ट कर रही है, पत्थर, फूल, पेड़ नहीं, ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस, राइट? There is thus an important difference between distinctively human existence and anything else. तो ये बोल रहा है कि अभी यही पे डिफरेंस आ जाता है. There is uniqueness in being a human or being just any object and just exist. ठीक है? Is not being understood on the model of things that is as object knowledge. क्या बोल रहा है ये? There is thus an important difference between distinctively human existence and anything else, and human existence is not to be understood on the model of things. जो हम model of things, किसी भी चीज के existence को समझने के लिए, मान लो physics, chemistry, biology, zoology, कुछ भी हम पढ़ते हैं उसके existence को समझने के लिए, it is not just constricted to that only. That is as object of knowledge. We are not just object of knowledge. Human is not just object of knowledge. ऐसा हमारा author कह रहा है. One might think that this is an old idea rooted in Plato's distinction between matter and soul. अभी ये आइडिया कहाँ से आता है कि ठीक है, if matter and body we exist distinctively, distinction between matter and soul, or Descartes between extended and thinking things. अभी extended क्या है? Those physical things, and thinking things यानी those physical things that have brain, right? But these distinctions appear to be just differences between two types of things. Descartes in particular, however, is often criticized. Now, ये अगर दो अलग-अलग approach भी हैं, तो ये कुछ अलग, कुछ नया नहीं दे रहे हैं. They are just defining existentialism in different ways, but not unique. They are not distinctively defining the human existence. This is what author is trying to convey here. Descartes in particular, however, is often criticized by existentialists for subsuming both under heading substance. सब्सटेंस के अंदर आप बाकी चीजों को भी लेके आते हो और ह्यूमन को भी लेकर के आते हो. इसके लिए डिकार्टे को बाकी एग्जिस्टेंशियलिस्ट क्या कर रहे हैं? क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं. एंड thus treating what is distinctive in human existence as needed a thing or object, albeit one with different properties. यानी what is different between human existence as indeed a मतलब being an object, being simply anything, and being human, although one with different properties. ठीक है? तो then whether the existentialist characteristic of Plato or Descartes is accurate is a different question. अभी उनका जो डिस्क्रिप्शन है ऑफ ह्यूमन डिस्टिंक्टिवनेस वो एप्रोप्रिएट है कि नहीं है, एक्यूरेट है कि नहीं है, वो एक अलग ही सवाल है. द एक्जिस्टेंशियलिस्ट thus countered the Platonic or Cartesian conception with a model that resembles more the Aristotelian as developed in Nicomachean Ethics. अभी existentialist किसके साथ जा रहे हैं? Aristotelian के साथ. The latter idea arrives in existentialist thought filtered though Leibniz and Spinoza and notion of striving for existence. Right? Not just existing, but striving for existence. Equally important is the elevation of practical above the theoretical in German idealists. German idealists means just being like acting, doing action rather than just being a theoretical knowledge, right? Particularly in Kant, who stressed the primacy of the practical, and then in Fichte and early Schelling, we find the notion that human existence is action. Accordingly, in Nietzsche and Shorte, we find the notion that human being is all and only what that being does. यानी यहाँ पे author क्या reiterate कर रहा है बार बार? Action. ठीक है? My existence consists for forever bringing myself into being. जो मेरी existence है वो क्या है कि हमेशा मैं अपने action से अपनी existence को determine करता रहूं. ठीक है? And correlatively fleeing from the dead inert thing that is the totality of my past actions. यानी यहाँ पे fleeing from the dead inert thing यानी जो past है जिसको हम change नहीं कर सकते, हमारी body, हमारे past actions, हमारा gender जिसको हम change नहीं कर सकते, fleeing from the dead, उससे हटके, ठीक है? Although my acts are free, अब वो एक बहुत important चीज बोल रहा है, although my acts are free, but I am not free to act. My acts are free, but I have free choice, but I am not free not to act. ऐसा नहीं कि अब मैं कुछ भी ना करूं. Thus, existence is characterized by exigency. अब मार्शल ने एक term दिया exigency, that means that urgency to act, that compulsion to act. Okay? For many existentialism, authentic existence involves a certain टेंशंस भी रिकॉग्नाइज एंड लिव थ्रू बट नॉट रिजॉल्व। बहुत सारे एग्जिस्टेंस क्या बोलते हैं कि जो ऑथेंटिक जो जेन्युइन एग्जिस्टेंस है उसमें क्या होता है, एक टेंशन होती है टू बी रिकॉग्नाइज्ड एंड लिव थ्रू, उसको रिजॉल्व नहीं करना होता है, वी मस्ट लिव थ्रू दोज tensions, right? This tension might be between the animal means our instincts, desires, physical needs and the rational yani ability to think, reflect, create meaning, important in this needs, or between facticity. A facticity क्या है? Facts that we cannot change, our past, right? And transcendence. What is transcendence? Our freedom to go beyond those facts, beyond those inner things, dead things, and choose who we want to become. So Sartre and de Beauvoir has given this thing, right? Now, in 19th and 20th century, the human sciences such as psychology, sociology, and economics were coming to be recognized as powerful, legitimate sciences. ठीक है? To some extent, at least their assumptions and methods seem to be borrowed from the natural science, biology, chemistry, physics. While philosophers such as Dilthey and later Gadamer were concerned to show that the human sciences had to have a distinctive method, like these natural human sciences, these sciences have distinctive method, the existentialists were inclined to go further. इनका एक definite approach है, definite method है, लेकिन जो existentialist है वो उसके भी beyond जाना चाहते हैं. Now, the free, situated human being is not an object of knowledge. वो कोई जानने की चीज या पढ़ने की चीज नहीं है बस. In the sense, the human always exists as the possibility of transcending any knowledge of it. तो human के अंदर हमेशा ये possibility होती है कि we can go beyond to that knowledge, isn't it? Now, this is because humans always have the ability to transcend, meaning they can always go beyond any knowledge or definition that someone tries to put on them. Now, you can't fully capture a person with just facts and data. This is what author is trying to convey here. Okay. Now there is a clear relation between such an idea, the notion of transcendence of the other, found in ethical phenomenology of Emmanuel Levinas. Now author is bringing the similarity or analogy between this idea and this idea by Emmanuel, the transcendence of the other. ठीक है, तो अगर इसका सेंट्रल आइडिया देखें हम तो एग्जिस्टेंशियलिज्म डिफाइंस ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस एज फंडामेंटली यूनिक. लाइक यू कैन नॉट ट्रीट एग्जिस्टेंशियलिज्म और ह्यूमन एज एनी अदर ऑब्जेक्ट, सिमिलर टू एनी अदर ऑब्जेक्ट. इट इज डिस्टिंक्ट, राइट? सिचुएटेडनेस connected to our body, society and conditions, ठीक है, and defined by continuous actions and striving. It argues that human cannot be fully understood like objects as we constantly transcend fixed definition. जो भी fixed definition होती है हम उसके beyond जाते हैं हमेशा, emphasizing personal freedom and ongoing tension in living that we do not resolve, we live it, right? चलिए, I hope अभी आपको पैसे समझ में आ गया होगा. Now coming to the question, according to the passage, what is the key existentialist criticism of Cartesian dualism? ठीक है, देखते हैं. It does not fully acknowledge the existence of the soul. Is it? Does it? Is it the correct answer? आपने इसका पीछे का लॉजिक देखा? ये कार्टेशियन डुअलिज्म किसकी बात करता है? He actually acknowledged the existentialism of soul. वो distinctiveness में आकर के फिर वहां पे बात दिक्कत आ जाती है. ठीक है? Now, it reduces human existence to mere mechanical fiction. नहीं, ऐसा उसने नहीं बोला. It treats human existence as a substance or object, failing to capture its distinctiveness. Yes, the passage explicitly says that Descartes is often criticized for what? For subsuming both under the heading substance and thus treating what is distinctive in human existence as indeed a thing or object. This means they dislike how he made human existence seem just like any other object. ठीक है? Now, it overemphasizes the body while ignoring the role of thought. No, he didn't. राइट हमें हमारे पैसेज में पढ़ने को ये बिल्कुल भी नहीं मिला. ठीक है. हाउ डज एग्जिस्टेंशियलिस्ट डिस्टिंग्विश ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस फ्रॉम अदर काइंड्स ऑफ एग्जिस्टेंस अकॉर्डिंग टू द पैसेज? by emphasizing the material properties. Is it just material properties or their action? तो A is wrong. By describing it through scientific methods, no, it is saying that it goes beyond those scientific methods. By asserting that it must be understood through action, not an object of theoretical knowledge. Yes, the passage says that human existence is not to be understood on the model of things, that is as object of knowledge. They are not any object of knowledge. They transcend. यहाँ पे कौन सा term use कर रहा है हमारा होता है transcend, to go beyond that. It highlights the notion that human existence is action and human being is all and only what that being does. Their action, right? ओके, बाय रिलाइंग ऑन थियोलॉजिकल इंटरप्रिटेशन, ऐसा गॉड या थियोलॉजिकल इंटरप्रिटेशन की तो बात हुई ही नहीं है आउट ऑफ कॉन्टेक्स्ट. चलिए नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. व्हाट फिलोसॉफिकल ट्रेडिशन डज एग्जिस्टेंशियलिज्म ड्रॉ ऑन टू एम्फसाइज ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस एज स्ट्राइविंग और एक्शन? क्या फिलोसॉफिकल ट्रेडिशन ड्रॉ कर रहा है टू एम्फसाइज ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस? कार्टेशियंस रेशनलिज्म, भैया क्रिटिसाइज डिकार्टे, तो ये कैसे करेगा? ठीक है. Platonic idealism says existentialists countered the Platonic or Cartesian conception, meaning they moved away from it, they contradict from it. Aristotelian practical philosophy filtered through German idealism, yes, directly given in the passage in third paragraph, जहाँ पे साफ साफ लिखा है कि existentialism are making harmony, या they agree with their concept. Now, empiricist naturalism, no. Critique of understanding human existence as object of knowledge goes against empiricist approach often used in natural sciences. Our author says it is beyond that. It is above that, isn't it? चलिए. Next question. Which of the following best explains the existentialist position in the relationship between human sciences and understanding human existence? क्या बेस्ट एक्सप्लेन कर रहा है एग्जिस्टेंशियलिस्ट पोजीशन को? देखते हैं. ह्यूमन साइंसेस फुली कैप्चर द कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ, बिल्कुल उल्टी बात कह रहा है जो हमारे पैसेज में लिखी हुई है. नो, इट डज नॉट फुली कैप्चर द कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी ऑफ एग्जिस्टेंस. ठीक है. ह्यूमन एग्जिस्टेंस कैन नॉट बी फुली नोन थ्रू साइंटिफिक मेथड्स बिकॉज इट ऑलवेज involve transcendence. Yes, बिल्कुल साफ साफ यही बात तो कही गई है हमारे पैसेज में, that the free situated human being is not an object of knowledge in the sense the human always exists as the possibility of transcending any knowledge of it. This means human existence is too dynamic and free to be fully captured by science, that it cannot be fully captured by any science, right? Now, sociology and psychology provide the best tool for understanding freedom. बिल्कुल भी नहीं, ऐसा हमारे पैसेज ने बिल्कुल भी नहीं कहा. पैसेज इज एक्चुअली सेइंग दैट दे आर इनसफिशिएंट टू फुली अंडरस्टैंड द ह्यूमन फ्रीडम ड्यू टू इट्स ट्रांसेंडेंट नेचर, ह्यूमन का ट्रांसेंडेंट नेचर. चलिए. ह्यूमन साइंसेस आर नेसेसरी टू एक्सप्लेन द मेटाफिजिकल नेचर ऑफ द सोल. Existentialism actually focuses on lived existence and action, often moving away from traditional metaphysical explanation of the soul like Plato or Descartes, right? ठीक है. Moving on to the next question. What does the passage suggest about the existentialist view of authenticity? याद करो एक्शन की कुछ बात हुई थी, right? Authenticity lies in resolving all inner contradiction of the self. बिल्कुल भी resolving की बात नहीं गई थी, बल्कि living those experiences की बात कही गई थी. Authenticity is achieved through withdrawal from social and historical context. बिल्कुल भी नहीं. It is within that social and historical context. So B is also incorrect. Authenticity involves embracing and living through tensions without resolving them. Yes, explicitly stated in the passage, right? Now, authenticity is irrelevant in existentialist thought. बिल्कुल ही out of scope option है ये हमारा. ठीक है. It is very much relevant. It is very much significant, isn't it? Now, how do existentialists reconcile individual autonomy with the influence of others based on the theme of situatedness? ठीक है, देखते हैं क्या बोल रहा है. They argue that true freedom can only exist in isolation from others' judgment. पैसेज में क्या लिखा है? We are what I am. ये कौन डिसाइड करेगा? How others see us, right? तो A is just contradiction of what passage has stated. They rejected the idea that others play any role in shaping identity. Marx की बात कही गई है कि everyone plays those economic money and let's see what is क्या क्या बोला गया है. Economic, political conditioning political conditions are not contingent features with respect to universal human nature, but condition that nature from the ground up, that basic conditioning, right? तो सिर्फ क्वेश्चन क्या था हमारा? Others play, they reject that idea that others play any role in shaping identity or freedom. No, they do not reject this idea. ठीक है, तो B is also incorrect. ठीक है, A is also incorrect. They view freedom as fundamentally dependent on economic class and social structure. Yes, यही बात तो हम वहां पे देखने गए थे. While Marx's influence on conditions is mentioned, the specific reconciliation of autonomy with others' influence is linked to Hegel's recognition, which is about interpersonal judgment, not solely economic class. ठीक है, दिस इज अबाउट हाउ अदर्स वी आर कॉन्टेक्स्टेड या सिचुएटेड सोशली. यही तो बात हमारा पैसेज या हमारा ऑथर हमको बता रहा था. ठीक है, दे recognize that every individual act is also a statement about a response to how others perceive and act towards the self. Yes, the passage explains that each of my acts says something about how I view others. Reciprocally, each of their act is a view about what I am, what others think, how others see. My freedom is always situated with respect to the judgments of others. Yes, so this is directly stated in the passage, hence D is a correct answer. ठीक है, चलिए, कमिंग टू द लास्ट क्वेश्चन. ओके, वी हैव रेड ऑल दीज स्टेटमेंट्स, राइट? अभी यहाँ पे हम सॉल्यूशंस पे आते हैं. A is actually the correct answer. 1C, 2A, 3B, 4D. How? Let's see. Match 1 says 1C. Then John Paul Sartre. 1C says human existence is defined by what one does, not by what one is. Like the passage states, accordingly in Nietzsche and Sartre, we find the notion that human being is all and only what that being does. This directly says that for Sartre, what you do defines you. Hence, human existence is defined by what one does, not by what one is. हमारे एक्शन डिफाइन करते हैं कि हम क्या हैं. ठीक है, फिर 2A. Human existence is historically and socially situated, not an abstract substance. Yes, passage ने explicitly ये नाम तो नहीं लिखा है, हमारे उस passage में हमें नहीं मिला है, but it is quoting this idea of that core idea of situatedness right at the beginning. Many existentialists take my concretely individual, the very starting, very initial lines of the passage, that specific type of life that my body lives as a primary fact about me. How I live my life is the primary fact about me. I must also be situated socially. Situatedness in general also has an important philosophical antecedent in Marx. Heidegger is a major existence known for emphasizing this very idea of human existence being situated or being in the world. This view counters the treating human existence as an abstract or detached or just as a substance, as Descartes or Plato is saying, which हाँ ठीक. आगे देखते हैं थर्ड मैच. B, 3B. ठीक है, 3B says Immanuel Kant, freedom is autonomy, self-legislation tied to responsibility. How? That autonomy means self-rule. So this idea is that true freedom isn't doing whatever you want but making your own rules by yourself. अब इसको हम passage में देखते हैं, that the elevation of practical above the theoretical in German idealistic, जो हमने पढ़ा अपने passage में, particularly in Kant, who stressed in the primacy of the practical as it is line mentioned in the passage. Kant is famous for his ideas on how reason guides moral action and freedom as self-rule, which influence existentialist views on action and responsibility. All right, and the last one, 4D, Emmanuel Levinas, human beings transcend all fixed knowledge. Yes, we cannot constraint a human into any science, यही हमारी लास्ट में बात कही गई थी पैसेज में, resisting objectification. This means a human being can never be fully understood or completely defined by others. तभी उसने transcend word दिया था वहां पे. और by science, as if they were a simple object, there's always something about a person that goes beyond what can be known or put into a box. So why is it Levinas? Because the passage explicitly states that the free situated human being is not an object of knowledge in the sense of human always exists as the possibility of transcending any knowledge of it. You cannot bound, you can define a human within any science. There is a clear relation between such an idea and the notion of transcendence of the other found in the ethical phenomenology of Emmanuel Levinas. This directly links Levinas to the idea of human going beyond fixed knowledge and resisting being treated as mere objects. आई होप आपको पैसेज समझ में आया होगा और सारे क्वेश्चंस के एक्सप्लेनेशन भी समझ में आए होंगे. ये कैसे मैच द फॉलोइंग है वो भी समझ में आया होगा. थैंक यू.